Shareholders are scratching their heads and licking their wounds over the losses suffered in Satyam and the Madoff scandals. But how does a company tell the public about millions or billions that it lost in a corporate fraud? Susan Lee asked a crisis PR specialist if earlier disclosure would have made things easier for the disgraced companies.
I think that they would have been able to focus on the fix and recovery faster. Now it's all about what did you know and when did you know it, rather than how do we get out of this situation. And communication is always the first step to making sure that you are seen to be doing the right thing.
Okay, yeah, you're the director of crisis, and as you said, communication is about seemingly you're doing the right thing,
well,
right?
Aligning your communication with your business objectives. Presumably, you want to continue in business. So, if you've got issues, you want to be forthcoming with them and making sure that those who need to know about them are kept abreast of those developments. If you're a listed company, then clearly investors, analysts need to know what's going on. And are able to react to that.
Okay, well, let's talk about these specific examples and cases then. Let's start off with Satyam,
right,
closer here to Asia. And what do you think of how they're handling the Satyam case? You say you're actually impressed that the government has stepped in so early in terms of intervention and trying to clean up this company.
Well, clearly, I mean, one of the ironies is Satya, or Satyam, is a Sanskrit word for truth. So the ironies only start there. But what we've seen, I guess, in the last couple of days, I think that is encouraging to the markets and especially global investors, is the speed with which the Indian government has come in and tried to clean up the mess, appointing some directors there that don't have any affiliation with the government, that are seen as credible, and really moving towards trying to make sure that the company is seen as a growing concern, or is able to maintain itself somehow. Now I think the challenge is to appoint an operational head with some kind of IT experience to keep the company going.
And what else does Satyam need to do to try to get itself out of this?
Well, as much as possible, focus on the fix, and come clean with what did it know and when did it know it. And I guess part of that is going to be tied up in the courts. But I think that as much as possible, the Indian government needs to continue with the encouraging moves that it's made in appointing the right people to keep the company going.
And how far do you think Satyam needs to separate itself from Ramalinga Raju, who's the ex-chairman and also founder, who's actually really behind this billion-dollar fraud case?
Well, I think right now they've got to reassure their investors, analysts, as well as the various clients that they have of how to keep the business going and how to service those clients. That's the most important thing right now. The rest, I think, will all be information will be poured out to the media, I think, in the coming days and weeks about how this whole thing unfolded. I think it's imperative to focus right now on how to keep the business going and how to somehow reassure markets that this is a viable business.
Okay, well, another big headline case is, of course, the Bernie Madoff scandal in New York, in the U.S. right now. If you're a financial services company, and you invested with Madoff, how do you communicate to your investors that maybe you lost a few million, maybe some billions of dollars in this Ponzi scheme?
Well, this I think is going to be something that we'll see in the coming days and weeks. I mean, we've worked with clients in the financial services industry to help them to get across some of these issues, planning for it. Interestingly enough, we worked with another financial services company, and the scenario that we had planned for or looked at in testing their crisis plan was a Ponzi scheme. We're not Nostradamus here, but I think that if you're in the financial services industry, looking at identifying those issues, a Ponzi scheme or a fraud type scheme is a very realistic scenario that any company might be hit with. How they deal with that, I think, is going to depend on what the circumstances are. But I think they need to really be looking at how do we recover, what's the fix, and where do we?
How do they clean up their image? In that some people, it's hurt their credibility. Couldn't they see this coming? How can I trust this company again with my money in the future?
Well, and studies have shown that companies that communicate with their shareholders and with their stakeholders immediately recover faster. I think they're going to have to look at the individual circumstances of what has happened. You've seen some big-time celebrities come out and completely distance themselves, calling Madoff a disgrace, and coming clean in terms of I didn't know. But then once you apologize for that, you've got to find a way to fix the problem. And I think they're going to have to look at, their own internal structures and communicate those with their investors or with their stakeholders, whoever they may be.
That was Rudowski, Knowlton's Regional Director for Crisis. Now,